Okay, if we're going to talk about how to do nonlinear presentations and give you a bunch of tips, I'm going to have to start by making you believe that there's a reason to want to do a nonlinear presentation. I've got to make you believe. And I think the best way to do that is to compare what's the difference between a nonlinear presentation and a standard linear presentation. That terminology is all mine. I just was trying to come up with something that I had seen a lot. What's the way that most business presentations tend to start? It doesn't matter whether you're doing a webinar or you're standing in front of a room. 99% of all PowerPoint decks start with what? An agenda slide. And you say, well, first I'm going to give you a little introduction, then we'll move on to an overview of the concepts, we'll talk about some of the basics, and then I plan to move on to advanced concepts. At the end, we'll have a summary, and then we'll have time for Q&A. And what this does is put your audience to sleep. I don't like agenda slides. They put the focus on the wrong thing. An agenda is very linear. It tells the audience not so much about what you're going to talk about, but how you structured it. And that's the least important thing to them. I'm going to talk about this first, and then I'll talk about that second. That's not what they came for. It's not the mechanics of how you chose to structure the presentation. They want value. And so you need to emphasize engaging their interests, emphasize their needs and their priorities. The other problem with agendas is the same problem you get when you hand out a copy of a printout of your slides before you start talking. Anticipation. Your audience starts looking forward. They're waiting for you to get to the one part that they happen to be interested in. I need basics, so when are you going to get there? I need the advanced stuff. When are you finally going to get there? And then they're looking at their watch. They're waiting for you to catch up with what they wanted to hear. So instead of that, I want to always surprise the audience a little bit. What's the next thing that's going to come up? You don't know because I don't know. We may change it on the fly based on what you're telling me. So that's what you need to do, is figure out a way to give your audience a say in the action. What are the things that are most important to them? What are the things they wanted to hear about? And with that being said, let's do that as an exercise right now. I'd like you to, if it's closed on the side of your screen, click that little orange button and open up the side panel. It might be open already. And type in the question box. How are you hoping nonlinear presentations will help you? What do you want to use them for? What were you thinking that made you want to sign up and attend today? And I'm going to look at what comes in the question area. You're going to see my mouse over here, and I'm going to move some of them in here. Jared says he wants tricks. Kimberly says she wants to know more about audience engagement. Okay, I'll type that. Creating interest. Sometimes I don't hit the shift key. What is a nonlinear presentation? Okay, what is it? I think we've already covered that a little bit, but you'll find out a lot more. Kim wants to know how to spice up presentations. All right, good. How to do some storytelling. And who was this that said that? Ron says keeping audience attention longer than 10 minutes. Yes, that can be a difficulty sometimes. All right, good. Karen also said storytelling was a big one for her. All right. How to encourage research presentations in a different way. That's an interesting application. All right. We'll put that in there as well. So you can see there's a lot of different views of this. And by the way, if you are an old-time PowerPoint user who is used to sharing a slide on a screen, you might be surprised that I was able to do what I was just doing here, typing in things as we go along. These are not animations. I'm actually covering some of the things that are coming in. Like Richard just typed in how to generate questions from the audience. And I can just type that right on in here. So this is something I'm going to show you. It's a nice way to get your audience seeing that what they are giving you is being reflected in the presentation itself. Immediately, your interest level goes up a little bit as they can see that it's not just what you prepared ahead of time, you're actually incorporating their interests. So that's great. I think we've taken a lot there, and we've got a lot more we can work on. And now I'm going to let you guide me. We're going to find out what you think we should do first. So I'm going to put up a poll and just launch that. You'll see it on your screen. Go ahead and click. You tell me what I'm prepared to talk about. Basic planning and preparation, how you go about putting together a nonlinear presentation. I can dig into the mechanics of using PowerPoint and doing things there, and then I can certainly talk about cautions and things you have to worry about. And I'm going to show you the results that are coming in, and we're just going to do it democratically, and we'll hit your interests first. I never know from audience to audience what they might think is the most important, the highest priority, and this is a great way to, again, give your audience a say in the action. Let them determine. All right, I think we've had enough time for many of the votes to come in, so let me go ahead and close that. We'll share the results so you should be able to see that it's a very close run, but planning and preparation seems to be just edging out the PowerPoint trick. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go into planning and preparation. Thanks very much. Appreciate your help on that. And we'll just click right into what do we want to talk about when we're dealing with planning and prep. You might think that a nonlinear presentation is easier to assemble because you don't have to worry so much about overall flow and the segue from slide to slide, because you can just bounce around between topic points and talk about whatever the audience asks for. Unfortunately, that's not always the case. It's not even usually the case. Honestly, a well-developed nonlinear presentation probably is going to take you more time to create than a traditional presentation. It's the old trick of if it looks easy and freewheeling to the audience, it's like the duck gliding across the surface of the water. Underneath, those feet are paddling furiously, and you're going to be paddling furiously as well. You're going to have to plan, you're going to have to set things up properly, and you need to practice. And one of the tools that you might want to use, it's something that I've used sometimes, is a mind map. Just anything to organize your ideas about topics and break them into chunks. What are the ways that you can move from topic point to topic point? What has to be together, collected into groupings? And this will also let you identify dependencies, things that have to be in a sequence, in a certain section. And you can look at, okay, what's an overview point, and then what's the detail below it? Now, this is just a picture that I picked up. This is not a particular tool that I'm using at the moment. There are a number of mind mapping tools available on the web. Some of them are free. Some of them you pay for. I'm not advocating any particular one of them. It's just a tool that you can play with. Bob was asking me what tool I'm using right now. I'm just using PowerPoint. This is straight PowerPoint, nothing else. So you can do more than you might have thought just with a simple PowerPoint deck. What else do you want to do? Once you've organized what your topic points are going to be and what are the dependencies, then you build out your basic flow. So this is something that I've thought about in terms of what are the things that I need to group together, what are the different topic points. And I have a standard flow that I could move through the presentation, but I can also say to myself, is there an opportunity to go in one of two ways? It honestly doesn't matter. If I start with presentation tips or I start with preparing yourself, I could go either way here. So there's an option point. I could give the audience some say in which they want to do. And then within an area, you can say to yourself, okay, are there some optional areas that I could show or not show when I'm talking about this subject? Do I want to dig into details or not dig into details? I'll actually show you an example of that a little later in the presentation. So you're looking at how can I organize this so that I don't have to follow a rigorous line, one, then the next, then the next. Now, how do you know what the audience is going to be interested in? One way to find out is to ask them. Isn't that an astonishing idea? Ask them on your registration page, what are the highest priorities for you? Have them send you an email when you send out a confirmation message that says, yes, you're registered to attend a webinar or registered to attend an in-room presentation. What are the things you'd like to hear about? Or maybe you could create a little web form, something on the internet, and you can do that yourself if you're an HTML coder, or you could use a tool, a third-party device, something like SurveyMonkey is a well-known one. You can get into that very cheap or even free for limited use. So these are ways to poll your audience, find out what's going to be interesting to them. Then you're going to start planning out inside of PowerPoint. And here you can tell I'm talking about PowerPoint as the presentation tool of choice, and I want to recognize that you might be using a different tool. If you're on a Macintosh, you might be using Keynote, and if you're on an iPad, there's oh, I can't remember the name of it. I just blanked out. But there's a tool on there. Or you might be a Prezi user. And each tool has its own ways of doing things. I have to pick just one to concentrate on. And honestly, still in the business world, PowerPoint has a larger market share. So I'm just going to talk about that one. Try and take away the key ideas and see how you would use it in your tool. What are some of the things you can do as mechanisms to jump back and forth? You can use hyperlinks within your slides. You can put action buttons in places, and these are things I'll be happy to talk about in the PowerPoint tricks. You can access a slide out of sequence, and you can use shows, custom shows. This is something you might not be familiar with if you're not an advanced PowerPoint user. I'll show you the way that they work, and then you can dig into it a little later on your own. What else? Feedback from your audience. I've asked you to type things into the questions area. We did a little of that, played with that. I have asked you to answer a poll, so we've used that. There are other features, and if you're in a room, you could just ask people to raise their hands and look around at what the group consensus seems to be. There's even a way to do that on a lot of web conferencing software, so you could try using a hand raise. If I look at polls, there's a couple of different types of polls. There's two big categories that I like to separate things into. You saw an example of me asking you, okay, what should we do next? And that's a single choice. You either get me, you tell me I want to do A or I want to do C, and I just look at how many people did each. But I could do something like priorities. What are your top priorities? And take a group cumulative amount and see, okay, if we look at all of them together, how would that work? Now, this is a point where I'm going to ask you, should we spend more time talking about this? Do you get what I'm saying, or do we need to dig into it in more detail? So again, let's just do a quick type in. That's going to be easiest. And just tell me detail or move on. And that's all I want to see is I want more information or I get what you mean. Move on, thanks, move on. Rachel, I see you'd like more detail. That's going to be in a handout that Ellen has available for you as part of the access to this webinar. Okay, so most people are comfortable with that, so we're going to move on. This is a place where I built in on this slide, by the way, an opportunity for me to either move on or to dig into detail. I don't have to do the detail, so we won't. What's the next step in planning and preparation? You need to know your slideshow much more than if you were doing a regular presentation that just goes from A to B to C or from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. Because I may be bouncing different places in my presentation, I need to know where everything lives. So I've actually built out, and on my desk in front of me is a cheat sheet. It's a one-page piece of paper, and it has the key places in my presentation where different things happen. So if you were to ask me, hey, Ken, I want to go back and talk more about PowerPoint details, I'd be able to go immediately to that slide. And then if you said, wait, we wanted to talk about planning and preparation some more, I could go to that section. And I'll show you again when we get to tricks how you can do that, direct access to move on. So it's very, very important as a presenter that you have a deep, ingrained knowledge of each of the major topic starting points in your presentation so you can get there when you need to. All right, that's enough for right now about planning and preparation. So I'm going to take us right back here and say we've done the first one, so now it's time to give you another option. So let me see, we should do which poll here? How about this one? I think we'll have the others. So now you can tell me, what should we do next? What's the next most interesting to you? We talked about the ways to set things up. Do you need to know more about cautions and things that are a problem? No, you want to, I can see already, even though a lot of votes aren't in yet, I'm going to close this off in a second because it's so overwhelming. I'm just going to show you. Here's what you told me. Almost 80% of the audience said, let's do it. Let's get into the tricks. All right. How are you doing the things that you're doing? And I saw some comments coming in on that earlier. All right. That's what I'm going to do. So PowerPoint tricks. I'm going to use PowerPoint 2010 on my computer to show you. It's the halfway point between those of you who happen to be still using really old versions and those of you who have moved up to newer versions. We all know if you've got a different version of PowerPoint, different commands are found in different places. They might be called something a little different, but at least the basic ideas will be there. So I'm going to just show you on my machine. Let me open PowerPoint for you, and I've got a just a silly little tricks deck, excuse me. You're looking at my cursor. Why don't you push your mouse all the way to the right side of your screen? That way you won't get confused. You see my cursor, I'm pointing at the File button in the tab in the top left corner, and now I'm moving it down all the way to the bottom right, and there's a zoom button. So that's mine that you're following. And this deck is purely for playing with, so I built little slides. 1 has 1 thing on it, 2 has 2 things on it, 3 has 3, etc., etc. What if I want to go, instead of from 3 to 4, if I put myself into slideshow mode? So here, I'm going to just push this. You'll see me pushing this button a lot. This will throw me into full screen slideshow mode. So now it's as if I was a presenter in a room. And if I just click the next key, or if I click the mouse on the screen, there it is, I go to 4. What if I want to jump immediately to 8 without going through everything in the middle? You might already know this, but you can just press on your keyboard, 8, enter. And now I'm on slide 8. I want to go back to slide 1. I press 1, enter. So you just click a number and the enter button. And because it waits until you hit enter, if you've got a long presentation, you could do 23 or 764, and you'd go to slide number 764. That would be a little crazy. But if you didn't know PowerPoint could do that, I've already shown you something fun. So now with your cheat sheet telling you where different sections live and your ability to go immediately to them, at any point you can just jump to where you want to be. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Let me go to a section here, text hyperlinks. I'm going to come out of slideshow mode. And again, this isn't a tutorial on how to use PowerPoint, so some things I'm going to do very quickly. And I'll just assume that either you know what I'm doing or you can figure it out later. Ask me, how did you do that? I'm going to insert a simple little text box. And I'm going to say, let's see, slide 2, slide 4, and slide what? 7. We'll just have some fun. Okay. Now I can highlight any one of those, right click. I'm clicking down my right mouse button, and one of the options in the list that it gives you is hyperlink. Typically, we tend to think about hyperlinks as going out somewhere in the web. This would go to a web page. What you might not know is that PowerPoint gives you a way to link to a different place in this document. You see over on the left-hand side of this window, it says place in this document. And now I can say, okay, this I want linked to slide 2. And there it is. Now I'm going to do the same things really quickly. This might not even display fast enough on your screen to catch up. So slide 4, click the right mouse button, hyperlink to a place in this document, select slide 4, okay. Slide 7 I'm going to do even faster because you've seen me do it already. Okay, now these are all set up. I'm going to put myself back in slideshow mode. There we are in full screen mode. And now I can go to slide 2 just by clicking on it. There I am on slide 2. But to get back, I have to use my keyboard way of getting back to something. Here I just click 9, enter on my keyboard. And now I can say, okay, now I want to go to slide 7. There I am on my slide 7, and I'll press 9, enter on my keyboard, and I'm back here. So we're doing pretty well with that. The problem is, look at the way those are colored. Remember when I showed you which do you want to do first, what do you want to do next, and it blanked out the one that we had already done? How did I make that happen? Instead of showing me this in a different color, it got rid of it completely. How can you do that? Well, that's just a trick. Instead of really blanking it out and deleting it, all I did was changed it to the same color as the background. So in this case, the color had to be the white. Now, you can't do that from the slide itself. There's another trick you have to use. So this time I'm going to go up to the top commands, and I'm going to click on Design to get my design tools from PowerPoint. And over on the side, something you might never have used in your life is a button that says Colors, and these are themes. Now I'm going to go down to the bottom and say I want to create my own special set of colors. And one of those, if you go all the way down to the bottom, see where it says followed hyperlink, the last item in the list? There's that purple color that it was showing. I'm going to change this and say make that white instead. Save, and look what just happened. The two that I have already visited are white. I can't see them anymore, even though they're there. So now we've got a way to make selections disappear once you've selected them. And it doesn't have to be white on white. If you're using a slide color that has blue backgrounds, you just make it the same blue. If you're using black, you make it black. So this is a great way to get that happening. But there's even more. What if instead of text, I want to just have random shapes? So again, I'm going to do something fast. If you don't know how to do this, look it up later. So here I've got a circle and a triangle. And we'll make the triangle be some other color. There we go, just for the fun of it. What if I want to make those have links? Well, just like I did with text, I can select it, right-click with my mouse, and say I want that to hyperlink to a different part. The blue circle should go to slide 2, and the red triangle should go to, whoops, where is that hyperlink? Should go to slide 4. Okay, and now in slideshow mode, I'm going to run it into full screen. If I click my triangle, hey, just like I wanted, it went to 4. And now I'll use my keyboard trick. Whoops, went to the wrong slide. This is 10. So you see what that cheat sheet does for you. You have to remember what slide you're trying to get back to. Why is this useful? Because you can create a shape. Let's just make a nice simple little box, and I'm going to put a hyperlink on that. Same thing you've seen in the past. We'll make this one go to slide 5 for no particular reason. And I'm going to put that down at the bottom corner. Now watch my next step. I'm going to change its fill to no fill. I'm going to change its outline to no outline. Now I can't see it at all. There's no way to know there's anything there. I put myself into slideshow mode, and what I've just done is made a slide that gives me a choice. If I just click normally somewhere on the slide, it goes to the next slide in sequence. But if I move my cursor down to the bottom, look how it changed to a hand, and I click down there, I go to my optional point. So now I've got a nonlinear way of moving through my deck and getting to a point only if I want to. That's what I had built onto my slide where I asked you, should we look at more details about polls or not? So I could choose where do I want to click on the slide, and because I know my presentation so well, I know where it's going to go when I do that. There's no other indication on the slide. The other thing I can do is if I have some fun graphics on my slide. Is this even legal? Let's see. I'll put a cute little picture on here, just something I had sitting around. I've got a picture of somebody. I can move. Let me put my little action button on top, and I can make my rectangle cover that graphic. And now I can make any point on my slide be active. So if I put that in if I put that in slideshow mode and I click on the graphic, it goes to slide 5 because I'm actually clicking on that invisible action button, action box. So you see the fun you can have just by playing with these little tools. Now the next question is, I am tired of having to remember how to get back to where I was. I want to go somewhere and come back again. In programmer's language, that's a subroutine. If you learned BASIC when you were a kid, that's a go sub. If you learned other languages, it's something else. And it's something that's very common to want to do in the flow of a presentation. Well, PowerPoint has a way to do that. It's called custom shows. And a custom show, let me show you how that works. It's a special tool. To do that, I'm going to go up to the slideshow command in the top line. And under slideshows, it has custom slideshow. So I'm going to click on that, and it says you want to play with custom shows, manage those. Yes, I do. I'm going to create a new one. And this gets really powerful. I say, let's make a custom show, and I'm going to give it a name of even slides. And included is going to be slide 2. I'll add that. 4, and I'll add that. 6 and 8. Okay. Now let's make another one called, you'll never figure out what I'm going to do, odd slides. And this one will be slide 1, 3, 5, and 7. Now I have these two shows that exist. Okay, I'm happy with that. Now I'm going to put one of our little things on the screen. Let me just go back to a simple text box because you understand that I could do the same thing. I'll say even slides or odd slides. And I'll hyperlink those, but instead, this time when I click my right mouse button, I choose hyperlink, place in this document, but instead of going to a specific slide, I'm going to say go to a custom show. So even slides, and now I'm going to do one more thing. I have an option. See where it says show and return? Click that. Let me do the same thing with odd slides. Right click, hyperlink, and what did I want? Custom show, odd slides, show and return. I've been moving through these steps very, very quickly. And OK. Now I put myself into slideshow mode. Here we go. We're presenting to our audience, and I say, let's take a look at some things that are even in our presentation. 2, I'm just clicking forward now, regular mouse clicks. I could do this with a pointer if I was standing in front of a room. Click, 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 and one last click takes me back where I was. Isn't that wonderful? Now let's look at odd slides. There's 1, 3, 5, 7, and I'm back. So now I've created a way to have any slides in my show in any sequence that I want to go to it and return to it later. Do you see the power of how you can use this non-linearly? Now, anytime anybody asks you to see some topic, some subject area, you can just jump over there, show the things in that topic set, and jump right back to where you were when you left. And remember, the reason you're not seeing the text phrases on this slide is because I changed the color of the visited hyperlink. So that's one of those things you have to watch out for. Let me take a look at some of the questions people are asking in the middle of this, because I've got a lot of questions about the specifics of operation. Jody, you were ahead of me on custom shows, so you're right there. Okay. When jumping by slide number, asks Susan, do you know the keyboard command to cancel a number you know you've entered wrong or decide you don't want to go to? Actually, Susan, I'm not sure of that. It might be if you just click the escape key, it gets rid of it, but I haven't tried it. Let's see. Here, I'll do it. We're in slideshow mode. I'm going to type 3 on my keyboard. Whoops, I didn't mean that. I'll click escape. No, that just pulls you out of it. I have no idea. Okay, Jody says try using a back arrow. Now, you see, I'm just letting you drive this conversation. So I'm going to type 3, backspace. No, that moves me back a slide. Okay, doesn't seem to be any way to deal with it. You better get it right. We've both found out something. All right. Marcia asks, how do you ever find that revisited hyperlink? Well, I could just go into my design set. Let me go back to that slide. Here's my custom show slide with my things that are invisible. And I could change my design, go up to colors, and say, just use a different theme for a moment. Let's see, there must be some theme in here that I haven't played. There we go. Just as soon as I change the color theme, and I can go back to the one that I had again, and now they're white. So you can change those color themes back and forth and see what you've got. Karen is asking me, is that what you use, the custom show, to go to whatever was chosen in the polls? Yes, Karen, absolutely. That is exactly what I used. So I had a section, a custom show that was built, and I called it Planning and Production. And if you asked me to go there, I just went to that custom show, and then it returned right back to my main selection slide. And if you had asked me to go to one of those others, you could see the hyperlinks. I click on it, it was a custom show hyperlink, and I went right back to it. So that way made perfect sense. Anne asks, how do you get it to reset? And there is no way in the world to reset visited hyperlinks while you are still in PowerPoint. They didn't give us that command, at least not in PowerPoint 2010 that I'm familiar with. What I have to do is shut down PowerPoint and start it up again, bring the presentation in, and then everything's reset. You want to be really careful. Don't save your presentation because it would save it with all of that information on where it was. So that's what you need to do to get that in. Now, I promised I'd show you one more trick, and this is really advanced stuff. If you are a beginning PowerPoint user, just sit back and relax and take it in. If you're an advanced user, you might really have fun with this one. And that is the active type-in box that I used when we were doing the little audience exercise, and I said, what's your highest priority, so that I can talk about those for you. I was able to type on a slide while I remained in PowerPoint slideshow mode. Ron just wanted clarification. Don't save the presentation. Yeah, Ron, I I believe in not saving the presentation when you've been running through it back and forth because it can sometimes hold on to some of that state-based information, and I think it's safer to build it, have everything set, save it once, and then every time you use it to actually drive your nonlinear flow back and forth, don't save it when you come out of it. And here's one of the reasons. I'm going to show you why as I create this. To do this, I'm going to have to change PowerPoint and what it lets me do. You see the commands up at the top here? The PowerPoint 2010 has this ribbon: Home, Insert, Design, Transitions, Animations, all of these things. I need something else that isn't there. And what I need is special developer level commands. So I'm going to go to File, down to PowerPoint Options. Stay with me on this. I'm going to customize the ribbon. That's what they call those commands. And over here on the right side, one of those, and this is on your machine too, it's there. It's just not active when you are normally using PowerPoint. There's this thing that says Developer. So I'm going to check box Developer. And now I can OK out of this. And look what happened. It added a new set of commands to my ribbons. So in Developer, one of the things that I can add is this thing. It looks like a little AB in a box. That's a text box. And I'm going to drag open a nice big text box, and there it is. Now this is useful for text, but it's not practical. It's not useful yet. I need to do something first. And again, this is going to get a little tricky for you, so if this is too advanced for your level, just wait a second. I'm going to move back into normalcy. But if you like this sort of thing, you're going to love this. I'm going to right-click on this control and click on Properties. So this is from the right-click button, Properties, and look at this huge mass of things to play with. Now, in the handout for this presentation that I've given you, I have this laid out so you'll be able to go in, and I'm telling you in the document what are some of the important ones to look at. Here are some of the most important. First of all, enter key behavior. For some unknown reason, they make that false. I like true, so that when I click the enter key, it moves to a new line. But to make it go to a new line, I have to say multi-line, that's this property, and change that to true. And now it will let me type in various things in that mode. So let me close my properties box and put myself into this mode. And now I click in here and type, I don't know, line 1, enter, line 2. So it's let me have multiple lines, and every time I hit the enter key, it just moves to a new line. So that's pretty nice. How about this format that it gave it? It puts it in what is called sunken mode. This is supposed to look like a box that's slightly inlaid into the screen. I don't like that. So instead, I'm going to click on Properties again, and I'm going to look at, where is it? Honestly, trying to figure out Special Effect. Here it is. Special Effect. Notice that it starts out as sunken by default. It's a weird default. And I'm going to make it flat. Okay, now that little border goes away, and what's fun about this is if I had another graphic, I could just overlay this on top of my graphic, put it anywhere I want. I can't see it, and it's just available for me to start typing. So that's what I did on that slide that you saw earlier. I had a cute graphic of a woman standing at a chalkboard. I overlaid a text box input control, and then I let this work. Now there's one last thing you need to know if you're going to use this. Save it in normal PowerPoint in a PPTX format, and it doesn't work. Actually, it'll work, but it's going to give you some prompts and say, are you sure you want to do this, and activate this. So the way to save it is as a PowerPoint macro. If I go to Save As, one of the types is PPTM, a macro-enabled presentation. So you want to make sure to do that, and then it works perfectly. Next time you open it, you've got that control available to you. So there's some tricks. I want to move back into the rest of our presentation because I've got to give you time for other commands and controls. So I'm just going to push this out of the way for now. We'll come back to more stuff later. See, all I did was open another one, so I'll come back to our key. Now you see exactly how this works. This is nothing fancy for you now. It's not wowing you anymore. All you know is that I changed the color of the previous two links, and I know the one left is considerations and cautions. So let me give you a few of the things to think about. as you start planning to do a nonlinear style presentation. And the first one is that you're definitely going to spend more time putting together all of these little tricks, building hyperlinks and testing them out and all of that. So it's not always justified. You need to determine whether it's the right approach for you to use. Do you have information that has to build up from base principles? Well, then that has to be linear. If you have dependencies, the section where you have dependencies is not going to be nonlinear. Can you think of ways to segment your topic into different groupings and to chunk them out differently? If it's divisible information, then that's going to work. A varied audience might be a perfect one. If you don't know whether you're going to have really technical level people or business level people in your audience, build both parts into your presentation. Maybe you frame the same information differently, and you can use a custom show to go to whichever one is appropriate. You could put one of those hidden action boxes on your slide. Left side, you know, is for business people. Right side is for technical people. They never know that you're actually choosing the version of your presentation that's right for them when they do a hand raising in the audience. Beautiful. You need to ask yourself, how comfortable am I? Can I adapt to what my audience is telling me? Am I willing to drive this presentation in different ways? Do I have enough lead time to work this out and to make sure that I can go through it and get my cheat sheet ready and know where things live? So all of those have to be true in order for you to do a nonlinear presentation. Another thing, don't let your audience take over command of your ship. You are still the captain. You get to drive things. And that means sometimes your audience members want to go into too many of those little paths and side trails. You could build side trails and detail options all over your presentation. If you start running out of time, you just don't offer those as choices to your audience. They don't have to know what was available to them. You can elect sometimes to simply move on based on your time constraints and where you think the presentation should go. You could have an almost entirely linear presentation built as a standard presentation with one place in it that you add a little bit of nonlinearity. Even that much will let your audience think that you're paying more attention to them. So that's great. What else can you do? Oh, I actually mentioned this one already. Here's not knowing my own presentation well enough. I was going to say this. Dealing with too many detours. Take back control when you need to. Use requests for additional detail or additional topics that people want as a way to decide on future presentation topics. This is a great way of soliciting information for what's my next presentation going to be. Don't be afraid to use that. Now, another big one. If you work in a corporate environment and you have a lot of people who contribute to getting a presentation done, you have a corporate branding group that has to look at them, you have different speakers who are contributing different bits, you need to say, because we're adding this kind of functionality where you can go one way or another, we have to lock this down very early. We can't make last-minute changes because if we add a slide or delete a slide somewhere, it could throw the entire thing out of the window in terms of what the cheat sheet is and where your custom shows go. You want to be very careful. The other thing that you have to worry about is your slides really don't have any use as a handout anymore. If you've built a presentation, this presentation, if I were to print it out and hand it to you, has my Q&A slides in the middle. It has those different custom shows, the different sections just randomly sprinkled in at different places because I don't know which order I'm going to do it in while I'm delivering it to you. So I'm not going to give you the slides themselves. That's why I created an entire white paper. Everything that I'm telling you in this presentation is printed out in really detailed text, so you're going to have all of that as a reference. So you need to take that extra time and extra work to make a handout that makes sense for your audience because your slides no longer make sense. And by the way, I mentioned briefly if you're working with guest presenters, this is a marvelous way of working with them. You can have a little section with a couple of placeholder slides for them that have their ability to bring in some detail, and then you don't have to have them in a specific place in your presentation. You can just be ready to bring in their custom show at any point. You say, hey, you know, while we're talking about this, I think it's a great time to bring in Jane, who is our expert on this subject. Jane, why don't you start talking about this? And you immediately jump to Jane's slides. And they don't have to be in the normal flow that you thought you were going to get to. You just need to make sure Jane knows that she could come in at any point. Testing is really important. You need to test each possible branch and make sure that when it goes to one of those alternate locations, it comes back to the right place. You need to make sure you remember how to get to those different points on your slides if you hid an invisible action button down at a corner of a screen. So this is really important for you. And that is going to cover all of the things we were here to talk about, and you get to drive the rest of the discussion here. I've got plenty of time waiting for you, and as we do it, you're going to see me jump around different slides to try and answer your question. I'm just using those keyboard controls and my little cheat sheet to tell me where we should go to take a question. And I'm going to ask Ellen to unmute herself and come back in as my helper. Ellen, if you can find questions from the audience, it'll take a little of the burden off of me. You ask and I'll answer.
So first of all, thank you. We have some really nice comments of people learning some great new stuff, so I think they're very excited about it. So let's start. Marcia asks, did you ever use visual cues to other slides, like a thumbnail to it?
Oh, I did not use other visual cues on this one because I knew where things were. What I did was I'm using presenter mode on a separate monitor that you can't see on the webinar, so it'd just be like if you're standing in front of a room. And in the notes section, I actually did a little cue for myself that said, remember, there's a hidden button at the lower left corner. Yeah, I made that very, very quick for myself. So I did it in my notes as a memory aid. If you've got a lot of those, you might want to put in a little thumbnail or a little something that can help you remember that.
Karen says, for instance, I've used a home button. Yes, so some of those action buttons have shapes that are like a home button or a next button that indicates a specific thing. Right. So Erica says, I often find that audiences are not engaged at the beginning of a presentation and may not be willing to answer the question of what they want to hear. Any tips on how to get the audience engaged from the beginning? And there was that slide that you just showed was a good example of an engaged audience. Everybody raised their hand at once.
It's what we always hope for. Yes. Erica, if you were on early before our scheduled start time, you would have noticed that I was typing in things in the chat and saying, hey there, it's Ken, where are you from? Thanks, we're going to be starting soon. And I tried to get your fingers on the keyboard. So I was attempting to engage my audience before the formal start of things. Then the next thing I did, as soon as we started, I gave you a little something. I told you that this is going to be of some value to you because it's going to get you out of the trap of boring your audiences with the standard agenda slide and why that doesn't work. So I did it like an infomercial would do it on TV. What's the problem that we typically have? And what are you going to get out of this by listening? Now it put the value purely on you, saying you should be interested in this because this is for your benefit. Instead of saying, hi, I'm Ken, I'm wonderful, I have a company, I'm going to tell you things that I know and I'm going to do it in this order. And that's the way that you put an audience to sleep. So I keep trying to emphasize value to you of participating, and that tends to get your audience more interested.
Rachel says, how do you get that row of buttons with options on the top? She's talking about the quick access toolbar, and that I think she might, you put it below the ribbon instead of above the ribbon.
I did, and that's one of those things where PowerPoint has a million different ways you can configure it. Let me see if I can bring that back up quickly. Here's my PowerPoint. I believe you're talking about this row with all my little icons. That's a lot of customization. You can tell that I use PowerPoint a lot when you see one of these. You right-click and you say, customize the quick access toolbar, and then you can start adding all those commands with all those little things. And as Ellen said, you can put it different places above or below the standard set of commands. So that's just my particular version of PowerPoint. I didn't put it back, reset it to default. Sorry if that was confusing, but it takes me too long to get it the way I like it.
Well, you can actually save, I think you can do that in 2010. I know you can 2013. You can save different setups so that you can have one for your own use and one for teaching, for example, something like that. Anyway, that's another story. Wilma said, learned lots of new tips and tricks. Thanks. Where do you, Vaughn wants to know, where do you get all your background photos?
Oh, background photos. I don't think I even have a slide for that. Let's see. I'll put this one up. I got these from a variety of stock photo sources. If you go out to Google or your favorite search engine and type in stock photography, it gives you a way to license real usable commercial photographs, clips that you want. One of our sponsors today actually provides a lot of clip art and wonderful background animations. And Ellen, if I say their name, I'm going to get it a little wrong. So we're going to mention them at the end. And that'll be a great way for you to find some of those elements that you can put into your presentations. The things you don't want to do is just go out randomly, do a search on Google Images and grab something that you find, because that's probably copyright owned by somebody and you can get in trouble for that.
Martha wants to know if your cheat sheet is in the handout.
Oh, no, I'm not even going to put up a slide for this. My cheat sheet is not in the handout because it doesn't really do you any good. All it says is a slide title name and a slide number, and another slide title name and another slide number. So that's it. It's as easy as it could possibly be. I want it to be really, really small so I can just glance at it. And that's what I'm doing, by the way, with these slides while you're asking questions. My cheat sheet says interactivity is slide 15. So I know that if I type slide 15, whoops, and you know what I just did was exactly what that person was asking earlier. I typed the wrong number. So if I want to talk about PowerPoint, I type slide 12, and that's just my cheat sheet. PowerPoint equals slide number 12, so that I can go there quickly. And when I'm ready to take another question, okay, that's back to slide 9. We're ready for another question.
Anna says, this is awesome. I'm a fairly advanced PowerPoint user, and I had no idea it had this type-in capability. Wow. So I wanted to say that I knew about this capability, but the little detail that I didn't know about was to use that flat setting to make it invisible. So that was something that I learned as well.
Awesome.
Yes. Let's see what else.
Oh, I want to address one, Ellen, while you're still looking. Darren asked, if I prepare a presentation on my PC, save it on a memory stick, I take it to a venue, is there a danger that they have a different version of PowerPoint, all my tricks are going to get messed up? There is a danger. They should work the same, especially if you're going from yours is an older version up to theirs is a newer, you should be fine. But if they have an older version of PowerPoint and you're using something that relies on some kind of clever capability, it's the same thing as if you put in an animation effect that the old version doesn't know about. You really want to test it out, and it's something that I try to do if I can as a guest presenter at a forum. I go to the site a day early and I say, can I get on your machine and make sure it's going to work if they force me to use their machine? I really want to test, especially in this kind of a setting. I'm much more comfortable when I get to use my own computer because I know it works on that. So it's a very valid concern, Darren.
Anne says, terrific presentation, I learned so much. Richard says, online third-year college students presenting technical science info. Any advice?
Richard, I would say that for technical presentations with technical information to a professional group, you want to offer them the high-level points. Say, what should we talk about? Are you most interested? Do you already understand this? Have you gotten it in your education or not? You've used that option point to go to the next major topic area. Within the topic, you're probably going to have a very linear flow with a lot of dependencies. I need to tell you this before you're ready to get the next piece of information. So keep that linear, and then at the end, you could just throw in a little bit of this, what you're seeing me do. This is not actually a difficult thing to do. Have some of these cute little slides built up for different kinds of advice, and it makes the QA session not quite as boring as staring at the same static slide throughout the entire thing. I hope you think that. That's what I find.
Okay. Let's see. So Leslie says, problem is I work for a nonprofit with no funds for graphics. I always need free ones. I will say that on my website, if you go to my blog and just look up free images, I have a blog post that lists lots of places for free images that are also legal. Some need attribution that you have to put on the slide, and some don't. And PowerPoint is also, you know, they won't look as nice as this, but PowerPoint has a great collection of photos that you can also use. They
do, and you can also type into your search engine free stock photography, and there are a few sites out there that have some freebies.
Right.
Ellen, I'm going to jump in here because Wilma has been patiently asking a number of times. When I showed polls here, that was not part of PowerPoint. Those polls were part of the conferencing software that we're using today, GoToWebinar, and most webinar software has that ability. It might look a little different from one technology to another. So that was a cheat. That if you're doing that in a room presentation, PowerPoint doesn't have a way to let people input their choices, obviously, and a number of vendors have made ways to do that where you hand out devices to people, or they have ways to tie in mobile devices like iPhones and you can type things in. But often you just go back to the classical raise your hand if you think A, raise your hand if you think B, and you as the presenter do a quick, okay, it looks like most of you are A. And that's the way you deal with it.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. Poll Everywhere is one of those examples. And today I just got I was on a phone call with Zoho Showtime, which they are going to be introducing, I guess they're going to show it for the first time at Presentation Summit in October. So if you're going to be there, that would be great. But look forward to that in the future. And it does offer some way to get feedback from the audience. So yes, those do exist. Let's see. Paul says, I have same info but need varied approaches for diverse audiences. Now I can use Custom Show to make one presentation and change for the next group or put it online. So he's just appreciating that tool. And Richard says Blackboard Collaborate has a poll tool. Yep.
And Richard, you'll find that Blackboard, I could mention any number of names of different companies. Most of them have that, so it's all a good thing to do.
So Ken, I'd like to finish up, and then we can stay over and with more questions.
Thanks so much. And Ellen, thank you for the opportunity to present.